I never thought silence could be this loud. But on the day I got married, it echoed louder than the music, louder than the vows, louder than the laughter of the guests. It screamed at me in every empty seat, especially the two in the front row. My parents didn't come. Not because they were sick or stuck at an airport or caught in a freak accident. They chose not to. And it wasn't just them. My younger sister, Celeste, the family's golden child, skipped it too. No calls, no apology, not even a bland congratulation message on social media. Nothing. It was as if they'd cut themselves out of my life entirely the moment I dared to do something before she did. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and in many ways it was. Graham, my now husband, stood across from me in the soft light of a late September afternoon, beneath a canopy of wildflowers, and looked at me like I was everything. The way his eyes crinkled when I reached his side, the way his hands never let go of mine during the ceremony. It was beautiful, it was real, it was ours. But there was an ache I couldn't shake, buried beneath the joy. It throbbed in quiet moments, the father-daughter dance that never happened, the cake cutting where his mother had to stand in for mine, the speeches where no one from my side of the family said a word. People noticed, of course. They whispered politely. Some even asked carefully, assuming there had been some misunderstanding. "Are your parents running late?" Maybe they had trouble with the directions? I smiled, lied, shifted the conversation. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to let their absence turn my day into another tragedy. But inside, I was bleeding. What hurt the most wasn't that they weren't there. It was that I wasn't surprised. I think I knew deep down, from the moment I told them I was engaged, that they'd never show up. The way Mom blinked slowly, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. The way Dad just nodded and mumbled something about it being a big step. The way their attention drifted. Back to Celeste. Always Celeste. I grew up with that kind of favoritism so tightly woven into our family DNA that, for years, I thought it was normal. I thought every daughter got measured against her sister. Every birthday became an afterthought if the younger one had a modeling gig that day. Every report card overshadowed by prom preparations or another ridiculous award Celeste had won. Celeste wasn't just talented, she was magnetic. Tall, thin, photogenic, brilliant in that effortless kind of way. From elementary school through college, she collected trophies, certificates, and followers like they were Pokemon cards. She was a model by 19, a business school star by 22, and now a rising executive in New York with a perfect LinkedIn profile to match her perfect jawline. My parents ate it up like gospel, framed her first magazine cover and hung it above the fireplace, hosted a party for her first billboard. And me? I was the girl who built things quietly, who solved problems on a screen, who could code for 12 hours straight, but never quite fit into the family's photo-ready aesthetic. I'm not saying I didn't try. God, I tried. I joined clubs I hated because Mom said it would look better. I took modeling classes once, after she dropped a brochure on my bed and said, "You might be surprised if you lost a few pounds." I even skipped a summer internship to help her plan one of Celeste's fashion events, just for a chance to be seen as the good daughter. But nothing was ever enough. There was always a better version of me, and her name was Celeste. So when I finally stopped chasing approval, when I built a life that didn't revolve around their validation, I thought maybe that would bring peace. And in some ways it did. But then came the wedding, and their absence wasn't just a statement. It was a message that said, "How dare you get married before your perfect sister?" And that message burned deeper than I expected. The thing about being the other daughter is that you learn how to shrink. Not all at once. It starts subtly, stepping aside in photos so your sister can be center stage, laughing quietly so your voice doesn't overpower hers, getting dressed quickly in the morning so Mom doesn't comment on how your thighs look in those jeans again. You learn not to expect applause. You learn to brace yourself for comparison. Every time you exist, Celeste was born with star power. Even before she could talk, She had a way of capturing every room. Teachers loved her. Neighbors adored her. My parents, they worshipped her. Every school play, science fair, spelling bee. She didn't just participate, she conquered. By high school, she wasn't just popular, she was legendary. Prom queen, debate team captain, student council president. Her life looked like the inside of a college brochure. Mine didn't. I wasn't invisible exactly, just blurry. The kind of daughter who gets nice effort instead of a standing ovation. When I graduated with a degree in computer science, a field I genuinely loved, my parents nodded once and went right back to helping Celeste prep for her next photo shoot. That same week, Mom had a custom frame made for Celeste's latest headshot. It went right over the fireplace, where my childhood drawings used to hang. Quietly replaced, quietly erased. At first, I thought the problem was me. Maybe if I lost weight like Mom suggested. Maybe if I wore makeup more often, smiled more, laughed less loudly. Maybe if I played tennis or joined theater, or switched my major to something more graceful, like Celeste's communications degree. I even tried modeling for one miserable semester in college. It was a disaster. Awkward poses, forced smiles, my body stuffed into sample sizes that didn't fit my frame or my spirit. When I quit, Celeste laughed. Well, she said, at least you tried. She never let me forget it. That's the thing about her. She didn't just shine. She made sure I stayed in the shadow. It wasn't always direct cruelty. Sometimes it was worse than that. It was subtle erasure. Telling our parents how well she was doing right after I shared a small success. Interrupting my stories with bigger, better ones. Sliding into my achievements like they were side notes to her narrative. And my parents, they let her. No, they encouraged it. My mother had this look whenever Celeste walked into a room. Soft, proud, radiant. She used to say things like, Celeste just has it, you know? Or she's meant for more. But when it came to me, the words were always about practicality. You should wear black, it's slimming. You might not get that internship, so don't get your hopes up. You're smart, but not everyone needs to be in the spotlight. Even in private, there was a hierarchy to our value. One summer, Celeste was up for a big modeling gig in New York. I had just gotten an offer to intern with a major software firm, my first real step into the industry. I remember telling them at dinner, heart pounding, expecting maybe, just maybe, a moment of pride. But the conversation turned. Mom mentioned how Celeste's agency was flying her out business class, and Dad asked if I could delay the internship so I wouldn't miss Celeste's runway show. I said yes, and I went, and I clapped, and I smiled for the photos while something inside me quietly cracked. By my mid-20s, I stopped trying. I stopped chasing the version of myself they might someday adore. I started working on becoming someone I could admire instead. I found a rhythm in my career. I made real friends. I dated people who didn't treat me like a second choice. And still, every holiday, every family dinner, every milestone, there she was. Celeste, the center of gravity, and me, orbiting. People outside the family never understood why I kept the peace, why I didn't speak up, didn't push back, didn't rage. But the truth is, when you've been dismissed for so long, silence feels safer than confrontation. You learn to pick your battles. And for most of my life, I picked none. Until the day I fell in love. Until Graham. Until the ring. Until the one thing I never thought I'd do before her. Marriage. When Graham proposed, it wasn't some Instagram-worthy spectacle. There were no rose petals, no violins, no hidden cameras. Just the two of us, barefoot in our living room. Thai takeout containers on the coffee table. Reruns of Frasier in the background. He pulled out the ring like it was the most natural thing in the world and said, "You're already home to me. Let's make it official." I cried. I laughed. I said yes with a mouthful of pad, CW. It wasn't glamorous, but it was perfect. The next morning, I called my parents. I didn't want to wait. Maybe, despite everything, some tiny part of me still hoped they'd be happy for me. Maybe this would be the thing that finally made me feel like their daughter again. But when Mom picked up and I told her, the line went quiet. Then she said, "Are you sure, Elena? Don't you think you should wait until you've gotten into better shape?" That was her first reaction to my engagement. Not congratulations. Not "we're so happy for you." Just a reminder that in her eyes, I wasn't ready to be seen. I wasn't beautiful enough for celebration. Dad didn't say anything at all. At the engagement party, Graham noticed how they stood in the corner the entire time, hunched over Mom's phone. I was too anxious, too busy trying to make sure everyone else was having fun to pay attention. But later, Graham told me he overheard snippets of their conversation. They were talking to Celeste. She was crying, saying something about how this wasn't supposed to happen, that I wasn't supposed to be first. That phrase stuck with me. Not supposed to be first. Even though she wasn't even engaged, Mom had already created Pinterest boards for Celeste's dream wedding. Venues, floral arrangements, designer gowns, color palettes. When I tried to ask for her help, her responses were cold, distant. Just keep it simple, something that flatters your shape. You don't need anything too flashy. It should be practical. So I stopped asking. Instead, I planned the wedding with Joanna, Graham's mother, who, in the span of a few months, became the mother I had always wanted. She beamed when I showed her my dress. She cried when we tasted cake samples. She held my hand when I started doubting whether I deserved a beautiful day. She never once made me feel like a backup plan. We chose a small garden venue near the mountains. It had this magical stillness to it, like time slowed down just enough to let beauty take root. I picked a classic A-line gown that made me feel lovely, no frills, no corsets, just soft fabric that hugged me without judgment. And when I saw myself in the mirror for the first time in years, I thought, maybe this is enough. I carefully prepared our guest list, sent both physical and digital invitations, tracked the emails, confirmed read receipts. When my parents didn't RSVP, I followed up, politely then firmly. "Just want to make sure you got the invite," I texted. "Would love to know if you'll be there." They either ignored me or gave vague excuses. "We're busy that weekend." "We need to check with Celeste's schedule." Celeste. Always Celeste. Eventually I stopped asking. I had a wedding to plan. Graham's family rallied around us. His sister hosted the bridal shower. His cousins helped with the flowers. Joanna brought handwritten place cards and vintage napkin rings. Every detail had love behind it, real, messy, imperfect love. And still, their absence hung like a storm cloud over everything. At the rehearsal dinner, I kept glancing toward the door. At the cake tasting, I saved a slice for them, just in case. Even on the morning of the wedding, a part of me waited, hoped, imagined them walking in, smiling, surprising me. But they didn't. They never intended to come. And somehow, I knew it all along. The morning of the wedding was clear and still, like the world was holding its breath for something sacred. The mountains stood quiet in the distance, draped in mist, and the air smelled of lavender and pine. It should have been the happiest day of my life, and in many ways it was. But when I stepped into the garden, veil gently brushing my shoulders, the first thing my eyes went to were the 2 front row seats, empty, reserved, untouched, waiting. I had known they wouldn't come, but knowing and feeling, those are 2 very different things. I remember standing behind the wooden archway with Joanna, holding my bouquet of wildflowers, knees slightly shaking. She tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and said, "You look breathtaking, sweetheart." I smiled, but something inside me stayed still. I wasn't nervous about marrying Graham. I was grieving the parents who were alive and well, but couldn't find it in themselves to be there for me. The music started. My feet moved forward. And suddenly, everything else fell into place. The people who did come, Our friends, Graham's family, even a few coworkers, stood with wide eyes and warmer hearts. Graham looked at me like I was sunlight walking toward him. The officiant's voice was steady. Our vows were quiet and intimate, and when we kissed, the garden seemed to exhale in joy. It was beautiful. It was everything I'd hoped, except for the part that would never be. There was no father-daughter dance. The seat next to Joanna, where Mom should have been wiping away happy tears, remained heartbreakingly bare. No toast from Dad. No hug from Mom. No, you did well, or I'm proud of you. Not even a note. Every time someone clinked their glass for a toast, I felt a tiny tug behind my ribs. Every time someone complimented my dress, I thought about how Mom never saw it, never cared to. I had imagined that maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me, that they'd show up late, dressed to impress, pretending it was traffic or bad directions or something equally forgivable. But they didn't. They hadn't even texted that morning. The silence was deliberate, calculated, cruel. And yet, I didn't cry. Not then. I smiled for photos. I danced with Graham until my feet ached. I laughed when his niece shoved frosting into his beard and clapped when Joanna twirled with one of the flower girls. I lived in those moments because they were real, and I refused to let the people who didn't show up ruin the ones who did. But later that night, after the lights dimmed and the guests faded away, I stood alone at the edge of the dance floor. The garden, now glowing in soft candlelight, felt like a dream slowly dissolving. Graham came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "They didn't even call," I whispered. "I know," he said, gently resting his chin on my shoulder. "I shouldn't be surprised, but it still hurts," I murmured. He didn't say anything. He just held me, and in that silence I realized something. They had made their choice, not just that day, but every day before it. Every time they turned a blind eye to Celeste's jabs. Every time they forgot my achievements. Every time they reminded me with words or glances or sighs that I was second best. They had chosen who they loved out loud, and I had spent my whole life begging for the scraps of that affection. No more. After the wedding, I called them. Just once. I needed to know, needed to hear the lie for myself. Mom answered. Her voice was clipped, defensive. "We never got a real invitation," she said. "You sent something digital. That's not the same. We didn't feel included." I told her I had sent both, that the email showed read receipts, that the physical mail had confirmed delivery. She paused. Then she said, "Well, maybe you used the wrong address. You know we've had trouble with that P.O. box." That wasn't true. They've lived in the same house for 30 years. Same mailbox. Same email. Same excuse. I didn't argue. I just said, "I'm sorry you felt excluded," and hung up. And as I set the phone down, I finally cried, not for what I had lost, but for what I never had. It started with a text. 3 weeks after the wedding, after all the cake had been eaten and the flowers wilted and the photographs printed, I received a message from my mother. Not "sorry we missed it." Not "you looked beautiful." No, it was an accusation. "You could have at least warned us that your cousin wouldn't attend Celeste's engagement party. It seems like you've been spreading stories, Elena." I stared at the message, reading it over and over as if it might change. But no, it was exactly what it looked like. Blame. Apparently, in the weeks following my wedding, whispers had begun to circulate within the family. People were asking why my parents hadn't attended, why Celeste didn't show up, why no one from my side had said anything during the toasts. And I, God forbid, had told the truth. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I simply said what happened. They didn't come. They ignored the invitations. They chose not to be there because I got married before their perfect daughter. That was it. But for them, the truth was more threatening than any lie, because the truth made them look bad, and they couldn't stand that. I tried to let it go. I really did. But then came the calls, the comments from relatives, the passive-aggressive jabs in the family group chat I hadn't checked in months. Celeste, of course, played the victim. Elena's just bitter. She's trying to ruin my special day. And then came the breaking point. My parents called me. They didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask about the honeymoon. Didn't even congratulate me properly. Instead, they accused me of sabotaging Celeste's upcoming wedding, of being jealous, of wanting attention. I could have hung up. I could have smiled and nodded and swallowed the bile like I always had. But I didn't. Instead, I said something I'd never said to them in my entire life. You're right. There was a pause, the kind of silence that stretches between walls and years and scars. I am jealous, I said. Not of her job, not of her face or her career or her perfect life. I'm jealous of the love you gave her so freely, the love you held back from me like it was conditional, like I had to earn it, and she got it just for breathing. My mother gasped. My father tried to interrupt. I kept going. I'm jealous of how you showed up to every one of her school events with posters and balloons, but you barely remembered my graduation. I'm jealous that she got a party for her first modeling gig while I got a well done and a nod when I landed a 6-figure job. I was shaking, not with fear, but with clarity. I remember when you canceled my graduation dinner because Celeste got a call back. I remember when you spent 3 weeks planning her prom dress fittings and gave me a hand-me-down. I remember all of it. You think I never spoke up? I did. You just didn't listen. They tried to cut me off, of course. Dad said I was exaggerating. Mom said I was being unfair. And then she said it. We never thought you'd go this far, to ruin your sister's wedding out of spite. But we always knew you were insecure about her. This just proves it. That's when it hit me. They weren't listening. They never had, because in their story I was always the problem, always the difficult one, the bitter one, the one who couldn't just be happy for her sister. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I didn't ask for understanding. I let their words hang in the air like smoke, and then I blew them out. I was raised by people who loved one child and tolerated the other. I'm done pretending that didn't leave a scar. I hung up. Calm. Steady. Done. When I walked outside, the sun was setting behind the mountains. Graham was already on the porch, 2 mugs of tea in hand. He looked at me, saw my face, and didn't ask a single question. Just handed me the cup and held my free hand. They're never going to change, are they? I whispered. No, he said softly. But you have. I should have known she wouldn't stay quiet. The thing about Celeste is, silence has never been her style. She lives in the spotlight, was raised in it, shaped by it, addicted to it. The idea that someone else, especially me, might be getting attention, even for a moment, must have felt like oxygen being sucked out of her lungs. So when she finally texted me, I wasn't surprised. Her message came wrapped in a tone so sweet it burned. What you said to Mom and Dad was really hurtful. They've supported us both so much, Elena. Not everything has to be a competition. Please don't turn this into a family war. A family war? As if I had declared it. As if I hadn't spent 3 decades dodging landmines while she walked red carpets of approval. I didn't reply, not out of rage, not out of fear, but because what was the point? Her words were the same ones she'd always used. Gentle on the surface, venom underneath. A masterclass in manipulation. She never did well with being ignored. So when I didn't respond, she found a new audience, my husband. Graham got the first message during a meeting. I saw it pop up on his screen and watched his eyebrow twitch. It started innocently enough. Hi, Graham. I thought I'd reach out since Elena isn't answering. Just want to make sure she's okay. And then the layers peeled back. She's been really emotional lately, and I'm worried she might misinterpret things. You know how sensitive she can be. Then the final blow. I think maybe you, as her partner, can help her see the bigger picture. Sometimes it's hard for her to understand how family dynamics work. She takes things so personally, that was the moment Graham burst out laughing. When I came home that evening, he was still shaking his head. We sat on the couch, rereading the messages together like they were entries in some deranged sitcom script. She'd even tried to hint that maybe he didn't know the whole story, that maybe he should speak to our parents directly, as if he were some clueless man waiting to be enlightened by her curated version of truth. "She really doesn't know me at all," he said, tossing his phone aside. "And she sure as hell doesn't know you." For years, Celeste's words had cut me like glass, sharp, delicate, and always with plausible deniability. But this time they felt desperate, hollow, like a mask cracking under its own weight. She wasn't reaching out to fix things. She was reaching out to control the narrative. And for once in my life, I didn't let her. It was liberating, not in some movie montage, girl power anthem kind of way, but in the quiet, private shift that happens when your body finally stops bracing for impact. I saw her clearly, maybe for the first time, not as the golden girl, the favorite, the untouchable, but as a woman so terrified of losing her place on the pedestal that she would sabotage anyone who dared to step into the light. Even me, especially me. And the saddest part? She didn't even realize that pedestal was already cracking. Because while she was busy texting Graham, our extended family was making decisions of their own. Word had spread. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had watched me grow up quietly beside her blaze, had started to question what they had once admired. Some declined to attend her bridal shower. A few withdrew from her wedding party altogether. Even our uncle, my father's own brother, the one who always kept silent to avoid family drama, sent me a message that said, "I should have spoken up years ago. I'm sorry." Celeste hadn't just lost her grip on me. She was losing her grip on the entire illusion. The downfall didn't come with screaming matches or family interventions. It didn't need to. It came quietly like rot beneath polished wood. Slow, steady, inevitable. It started with the RSVPs. Celeste's wedding, once poised to be the social event of the year, featured in a luxury vineyard in the Hamptons with custom gowns and a designer floral wall, was bleeding guests. People who had once posed in every family photo, who had toasted her achievements without question, were suddenly unavailable. Scheduling conflicts, last-minute emergencies. "So sorry, we just can't make it." But it wasn't just the absences, it was the silence behind them. No reposts of her engagement photos. No "can't wait for the big day" comments. No heart emojis flooding her announcements. Just a growing void where applause used to live. And for the first time, Celeste had no idea how to fill it. My parents noticed, of course. They blamed everyone but themselves. "They're jealous," Mom snapped during one call, voice tight with frustration. "They're buying into Elena's version of things. We always tried to be fair. You've twisted everything." I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I didn't need to, because the truth was finally louder than the performance. They had spent years crafting an image. The doting parents, the shining daughter, the perfect household wrapped in smiles and Pinterest boards. But all it took was one missing piece, one empty chair at my wedding, for the cracks to show. People started asking questions. And once you start asking, you can't unsee. My cousin Lindsay told me later that the final straw was a comment at a baby shower. Someone asked Mom why they hadn't attended my wedding. She laughed, and said, "We never got a formal invitation. It was just one of those online things. We didn't feel it was real." That was the moment Lindsay decided not to go to Celeste's bachelorette weekend. It wasn't the lie, she told me. It was how easy it came out of her mouth. Another cousin, one who had always adored Celeste, messaged me to ask what really happened. I told her, without drama, without spin, just the truth. And she replied, "I believe you, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Even Uncle Henry, Dad's older brother, the one who used to say, "Family business is family business," called me out of the blue. "You've carried this alone for too long," he said. "He won't be at Celeste's wedding either." And still, my parents can't understand it. They call it sabotage. They call it envy. They call it betrayal. But they never call it what it is. Consequences. I've said nothing to the wider family. I haven't posted a single photo, shared a single story, named a single name. All I did was tell the truth once, calmly, quietly, and that truth has done what decades of silence never could. It revealed them. Now, the world they built, shiny and fragile, is starting to crack under its own weight. No matter how many emails Mom sends to clarify the misunderstanding, no matter how many desperate messages Celeste fires off to save face, people are stepping back, and the silence they used to punish me is now echoing back to them. The most ironic part? They still live in the same house, still use the same email they've had since AOL was a thing, and yet they claim they didn't receive the invitation, as if the internet failed them, not their own conscience. Sometimes I think about how easy it would be to rub it in, to send screenshots, voice messages, proof. But I don't, because this isn't about revenge anymore. It's about release. Let them say what they will. Let them spin their version of events into silk and gold. It won't change the truth. And it won't bring back the people quietly walking away. The image has shattered, and no one is clapping anymore. 3 days ago, I sat on my back porch and watched the sky turn lavender above the pines. Graham was beside me, a mug of chamomile tea in his hand, his other hand resting over mine. The crickets had just started their nightly chorus, and the air was cool, soft like a sigh. I hadn't spoken to my parents in weeks. Celeste hadn't tried again, and for the first time in my life, the silence wasn't a punishment. It was peace. It's funny how we're taught to believe that healing comes in dramatic moments, slamming a door, delivering a monologue, walking away with fireworks in the background. But for me, it came in the quiet, in the gentle unraveling of ties that once strangled, in the stillness that followed every confrontation I used to avoid. I had spent decades chasing a version of love that was never meant for me, trying to earn what should have been given freely, trying to become someone worthy of being chosen. But what I finally understand is, I was never unworthy. I was just never their ideal. Their idea of love was conditional, performative, pretty in pictures, but hollow up close. They didn't know how to hold space for a daughter who didn't shine like Celeste, who didn't fit neatly into their curated vision of success and beauty. And that's not my failure. That's theirs. Graham squeezed my hand that night, gently without a word. And I thought about all the things I'd lost trying to be part of a family that never truly saw me. But I also thought about what I'd gained by letting go. A husband who never compared me to anyone. A mother-in-law who made me feel seen. Friends who celebrated my wins, no matter how small. And a self I actually recognized in the mirror. I won't lie and say I'm over it. Some wounds leave shadows. Some moments, like seeing a father twirl his daughter at a wedding or hearing someone say, "You remind me of my mom," will always sting. But the difference now is I don't bleed from those wounds anymore. I just notice them and keep walking. Celeste's wedding is in 2 weeks. I won't be attending, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because I no longer owe anyone my presence just to keep the illusion alive. Let them host their polished event. Let them pose for perfect pictures. Let them bask in their curated joy. I hope, truly, that Celeste finds peace in her new chapter. I hope my parents find something to fill the silence they once used as a weapon. As for me, I'll be home, probably barefoot in the garden, planting something small and quiet, something that grows slowly, steadily, without needing applause. Maybe lavender, maybe rosemary, maybe something I don't even know the name of yet. Because sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all, just a life well lived, a heart well guarded, and peace that doesn't ask for permission.